Hello, my name is Memo. This is my channel, FancyMemo. Welcome back to my channel. And today I have a very awesome video for you all, because today I will be putting a bunch of diss tracks on a tier list. You know, diss tracks have been a big thing in 2024. It has lightened up the music industry, especially in the rap game, with Kendrick Lamar and Drake going at it. One of the biggest rap beefs of all time. It's truly up there with the Tupac and Biggies of the world, the Nas and Jay-Z's of the world. So I thought it would be a good idea to do a tier list, especially since this was actually recommended from one of my viewers. Shout out to Mystic Wolf for giving me the suggestion. If you have more video suggestions like this, anything music related, I'll definitely consider it and possibly do it. It might take some time because, you know, he suggested this like 2 months ago, but I'm finally doing it. I'm finally gonna do a tier list for these diss tracks. As you can see, I got the tier list maker up. I've got a bunch of diss tracks that I personally care about. Like, there's a lot of diss battles that I didn't really care for, so I just didn't add them, especially since a lot of them happened when I was like either very young or wasn't even born. So I just did the ones that I cared about, that I was alive for mostly. But yeah, I think this is gonna be exciting. I think this is a great video idea. So again, shout out to Mystic Wolf. And if you're not familiar with these tracks, I've got a playlist on my Spotify if you want to check it out. Most of these songs are here. Like, there's some that are on YouTube, so you have to check it out there. But most of the tracks that I will be talking about in this video is in this little playlist. I might rename it, but yeah, just check out my profile if you want to find it. So yeah, let's do this tier list. But before we do, if you like music related content like this, please subscribe, since that is what I do here. And if you're already subscribed and you want more of this for some reason, check out my Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. If you like basketball, more specifically NBA basketball, I have a basketball podcast. It's called Above the Rim Rundown, where we run down all things NBA. Check it out if you're interested. But yeah, let's jump into it. What should we talk about? Let's talk about probably one of the biggest inspiration behind this video, besides Mystic Wolf's comment, which is the Drake and Kendrick Lamar beef that happened this year. So let's start with Like That, which is one of my favorite songs of the year. I just made a video talking about my 10 favorite songs of the year, and Like That was on it for multiple reasons. Like, features energy on the track, the Metro Boomin beat that was very vicious, and I love the synths on that track. But obviously Kendrick Lamar was the one who stole the show and who had a pretty good diss towards Drake. J. Cole caught a stray as well. But yeah, I think Kendrick did a good job. I don't think it's the most vicious or vile diss that you will hear from him, but it's very witty, referencing a lot of Drake tracks and Drake references in general, Drake albums. I think it was smartly done. It was fun. It is a great song overall, but not the most vicious. So I will put Like That in the A category. I think that's fair. Bro, it's so hot. And weirdly enough, the first person to respond from Like That was J. Cole with 7-Minute Drill, which had a very boring beat at first, and then they did a beat switch with a conductor beat that was a lot better. And a lot of the disses there was very weak. I made a TikTok on it, and J. Cole fans were like,
"You're undermining it. It's actually a really good diss."
How is it a good diss if you're calling Kendrick Lamar The Simpsons? Calling Kendrick Lamar short. You're too short to hit me. That's lame. It really is. Saying that Kendrick Lamar has mostly good albums, except for To Pimp a Butterfly for some reason. Saying that Kendrick Lamar should drop more albums. Obviously, that was a reference to Jay-Z, but still, like, what are you doing? Like, J. Cole is calling Kendrick Lamar boring, even though J. Cole is one of the most boring rappers out. So, yeah, not a fan of 7-Minute Drill. I think J. Cole could have done a lot better. He was obviously not very into this beef. Like, he didn't really want to be involved, but he was kind of convinced to by his fan base. So that's why he ended up deleting it. But yeah, this was not good. I don't like it at all. F tier. It's an automatic L if you had to take it back, essentially. Now let's talk about Drake, who was the main target of Like That, who was probably the only person that should have responded. And he responded with push-ups, which I actually thought was pretty good. Like, Drake still went on the short angle, the same way J. Cole did, except funnier. Drake was funny and charismatic on the track. He mentions how Kendrick doesn't make a lot of money because of the deal he's in, which may or may not be true, but that led to the iconic splits line and the drop and give me 50 line. It's definitely a lot more memorable than any other diss not made by Kendrick. And when it first came out, I did genuinely enjoy it. So I will be putting this in the B. And now that I thought about it, I forgot to put a diss track that I will add right now. Alright, just added one. I just added Tailor Made Freestyle, which is what Drake dropped, I believe, a week after Push-Ups or the same week as Push-Ups, just trying to push Kendrick into dropping a diss track, which we all know backfired quite viciously. But yeah, I hated this one when it first dropped. I think this ruined Drake's momentum because he was doing well with Push-Ups, then tried to do a back-to-back moment with Tailor Made Freestyle, and he made a huge mistake by utilizing AI voices of Tupac and Snoop Dogg, which a lot of people thought was disrespectful towards Tupac, especially Tupac's family. Kendrick thought it was very disrespectful as well, so that kind of made him angrier, which led to this whole thing backfiring on Drake's face. But yeah, the AI thing was cringe. The fact that he utilized Tupac's voice to help Kendrick to possibly talk about Drake's pedo allegations was weird as well. Like, why would you even mention that if you were Drake, you know? Like, I know he was trying to do that Eminem be rabbit thing where you talk about your own flaws before the other person, but I think this really backfired, and it was a horrible mistake. So, once again, we will be putting a diss track in the F tier. 2 Fs already. How exciting. But yeah, this kind of worked because eventually Kendrick dropped a diss track, which is what Drake wanted, right? And that diss track ended up being Euphoria. In my opinion, one of the greatest diss tracks of all time because it has it all. It has very scathing disses. It is very witty. It is very fun to listen to. It has funny moments. It has the most quotables out of any of the diss tracks that we will be talking about in regards to the Kendrick Drake beat. Amazing beat switches. It is just one of the most memorable moments of the year, and it provided some of the best disses and most conversations as well. Like, a lot of people still talk about Euphoria to this day. So for me personally, this is an S tier. This is as good as it gets. Alright, so after Euphoria, I believe the next day, early in the morning, Kendrick dropped 616 in LA, which isn't the most vicious diss track. It was barely a diss track. There was disses, but he, mostly mentions how Drake might have a mole in his camp. That's basically like the biggest theme of that track. I really like how soulful the beat is. The singing intro was nice. The rapping was good overall. Not the best diss track when it comes to the actual disses, but as a song, it's phenomenal. It grows on me every listen. So 616 in LA will be in A tier. That's how much it's grown on me. It's a really great listen. An underrated track. But yeah, I believe after 616 in LA, that's when Family Matters dropped, which I have a lot of mixed feelings, but overall, I don't think it's that good. This is a very long diss track at like 7 minutes, and it's pretty similar to Push-Ups, as in they both address not only Kendrick, which was fine with Push-Ups. One of the reasons why I like Push-Ups was because Drake went after multiple people that went after him, but by this time of the rap battle, nobody cared about any other people that were trying to diss Drake. So when Drake spent so much time dissing other people besides Kendrick, it was like, what are you doing moment? Like, why are you spending so much time on them when Kendrick is the main focus right now? And when he got to Kendrick, he, as we just learned recently with the Not Like Us music video and the Pop Out concert, Drake lied a lot on Family Matters, talking about how he abuses Whitney, which doesn't seem like the case since they are on very great terms. How Dave Free is actually the dad of Kendrick's son, which, like, if you look at both of them, they look very similar, and Dave Free and Kendrick are clearly on great terms as well. So there's several lies here that kind of ruins Family Matters for me. Even with some of the production bits are cool. I like the way Drake starts things off. There's some likable moments, but as a 7-minute track, it overstays its welcome. The lies doesn't help. So yeah, Family Matters will go to D. Alright, I just had to take a fan break / like drink break because it's so hot right now. It's actually crazy. I'm melting. I'm drinking Prime right now. I don't like Logan Paul or KSI, but it's good. I can't help it. It's good. Alright, what were we talking about? We just finished Family Matters. So now that leads to Meet the Grams, which he dropped like less than an hour after Family Matters dropped. Now this was definitely pre-recorded, so it doesn't cover any of the allegations on Family Matters. But this was one of the most vile, evil, disturbing diss tracks I've ever listened to. It is that genuinely messed up of a diss track, because Kendrick goes after the Grams. He goes after Adonis, Drake's parents, Drake's daughter, which at the moment has not been proven true, so that is most likely a lie. But he goes after all these people and just decimates Drake, telling Adonis that I feel bad that Drake is your dad and he's the deadbeat and you deserve better, and hopefully you become more of a man that Drake is. He goes at Drake's dad, blaming him for the way that Drake is, and he sits down Mama Graham, telling her that Drake is horrible to women, and then obviously goes after Drake and exposes this child again. At the moment, there's no confirmation that it exists. The more life continues, the less I believe this child does exist. Now my theory is, this is a huge stretch, so it's just a theory, but I think Kendrick talks about a daughter, but in a more like hypothetical way, like he doesn't actually know that Drake has another kid. But I think what he's trying to say is that because of Drake's lifestyle and how he always sleeps around with a lot of different women, that he wouldn't be surprised if he has a lot more kids out there that even Drake doesn't know about, including this daughter that Kendrick raps about in Meet the Grams. This is a huge stretch. It's just a theory, so take that with a grain of salt. But that's like my only guess on why Kendrick would say that with his full heart. Either that or he was given misinformation, which is probably most likely the case. But let me cope a little bit, because this is probably like the only L Kendrick took out of this whole thing is the daughter lie. But don't get it twisted. Meet the Grams is extremely good. By far one of the best diss tracks I've ever heard. A lot of people try to discredit it because of the daughter thing, but it's not like the whole song is about this mystery daughter. It's a lot more deeper than that. Therefore, I would be putting Meet the Grams in S tier. That's how much I like it. It's that good to me. And this is where Back to Back comes to play, because after this, I believe, Not Like Us dropped, which we all know is a banger. It is by far one of the most accessible tracks from this whole beef. It has a lot of replay value. It's doing numbers. It had an insanely popular music video dropped recently. And in this track, Kendrick basically emphasizes the fact that Drake is a pedophile, which should have been talked about a lot more throughout the years, honestly, because what Drake has been doing is disgusting. And he's at the technical terms, and again, this is all alleged, so please don't sue me, but in the technical terms, I don't think he would be considered a pedophile. If anything, he'd be more of a groomer, because he would talk to these young women and then seem to wait till they're 18 to truly do something. I don't know. I feel like the label of being a groomer is more accurate for Drake, because I don't think he's done anything illegal towards minors in a sexual way. But this angle that Kendrick goes for makes for a great diss track. I love seeing the clips online of like literal children rapping to these lyrics, rapping about how Drake is a pedophile. I don't know. I think that's very, very funny. And yeah, great mustard beat, very celebratory as well. Like, this is definitely a huge moment for the West Coast. I should know, since I'm from the West Coast. I'm currently in the West Coast. I've noticed it around me. A lot of people are bumping this. A lot of people are enjoying Not Like Us. And it's actually bringing a lot of people together, as you can see from the Pop Out concert. So Not Like Us, I'll give it an A, just because it's not the most scathing diss tracks. I think that's kind of what you need to be if you want to be S tier, but it's still a fun listen. I like it a lot, so we'll leave that there. And the last diss track between these two was The Hard Part 6, which is Drake's horrible response, essentially being like, hey, I'm not a pedophile, which is what a pedophile would say. And in the very same song, he's also like, I knew you'd come at me with that Jeffrey Epstein angle. What? Like, if you're not a pedophile, why would he mention how you are like Epstein, a known pedophile? You know? It's very weird, very stupid. He brings up stupid angles, double down on some of the angles that he did on Family Matters, which again has been proven basically false. And at the end, he was like, Kendrick, you were a worthy opponent. You made me pull out the pen. Yeah, I thought this was like a lame way to end it, and I'm glad Kendrick didn't respond to this, because why would you? Like, Drake embarrassed himself on here. So once again, we got another diss track worthy of the F tier. Look at the balance here. Look at the difference. That's crazy. I will mention one more diss track from this era, which is Champagne Moments by Rick Ross. He wanted to get into the beef because him and Drake are not on the best terms at the moment. And on Champagne Moments, he basically tells Drake that he's a white boy, that he had liposuction, that he got like a tummy tuck, a nose job, a bunch of plastic surgery. He sent a cease and desist at French Montana, so that's kind of the main reason why Rick Ross isn't vibing with Drake at the moment. It's cool for what it is, but again, pretty unnecessary at the same time. Not bad at all, but a little mid, so we'll put it in C. Alright, we can now finally move on from Kendrick and Drake. And where should we go? Let's stay in 2024 and let's go with Megan Thee Stallion versus Nicki Minaj, who have been not on the best terms, even though they've made a song together. It's a common thing with Nicki Minaj to always beef with whoever is popping in the female rap realm. She had a very notable, I guess, diss on her latest album towards Megan Thee Stallion. And so in response, Megan Thee Stallion brought in Hiss, which I wouldn't call this like a very scathing diss track. If anything, it's barely a diss track because it just goes after like all the haters in general, not necessarily one specific person. But she did have this subliminal that was incredible. It's the Megan's Law line. With that line alone, that got Nicki Minaj pissed off, because if you don't know, Megan's Law is like the law in order to help publicize sexual predators. And that is very notable because Nicki Minaj is married to a sexual predator. So even though technically Megan didn't call out Nicki Minaj, Nicki was offended because obviously she is married to a sexual predator. So I think that alone could get Megan into the B category. Like, it's a good song. Definitely one of my favorites of the year. What isn't a good song is Nicki's response, which is Bigfoot, which, you guessed it, it's about Megan's Bigfoot. That's basically what it is. She is truly spiraling. It's like she's having a mental episode, and it's actually insane how pathetic she is on this track. Going after Megan's feet, going after her for sleeping with people consensually, which we can't say the same about your husband, Nicki, making fun of her for getting shot in the foot. It's, again, one of the worst diss tracks I've heard in my life. It is genuinely like unlistenable. It's that unlikable of a track. And yeah, Nicki Minaj is washed, bro. That's all I can say. Clearly an F tier track. There we go. Let's talk about Ice Cube and NWA. Obviously, Ice Cube was part of NWA for a while. Their main writer there. But, you know, he wasn't liking how he was being treated by Heller and the gang. He did not like the financial compensation he was getting. He was feeling disrespected. So he left NWA and dropped No Vaseline, which has probably the most wild and vicious title of any diss track, saying I'm gonna fuck you up so hard with no Vaseline. Essentially, it's gonna be painful and you're gonna take it. is what he's saying essentially. And yeah, it's a crazy track. It goes after everybody, gives a moment for every member, goes by one, and such a like telling them like you guys are nothing without him. A legendary diss track. And I kind of have a West Coast bias as well, even though obviously NWA is all West Coast members, but I'm saying that because the beat here, that West Coast beat, elevates it even further. So yeah, it's an S tier track. Now let's talk about Dr. Dre and Eazy-E, which, you know, was a very similar situation years later. Dr. Dre wasn't liking his compensation, he wasn't liking his treatment in the gang, and how Heller basically treated Eazy-E a lot better than him. That's at least what Dr. Dre and Suge Knight noticed. So as soon as they were possibly able to do it, Dr. Dre released The Chronic, which is one of my favorite albums of all time. I think it's a perfect album. And on The Chronic, he dropped Fuck With Dre Day featuring Snoop Dogg. This song is just so fire. And it has some good disses, not the most like lethal, but you know, there was disses within it. I think the chemistry between Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg was awesome. I like how they bounce back and forth with each other. The beat is insane. Like, this is one of my favorite produced songs ever, because it's part of one of my favorite produced albums ever, obviously. So yeah, I like this a lot, and I would put it in the A tier just because, again, it's not very scathing, it's not very lethal, it's just a really insanely good song. So A tier for Dr. Dre. Now when it comes to Eazy with his track Real Motherfucking G's, I think it's fair enough to say that he deserved a high rating as well, due to the fact that the beat here is awesome as well. I think Eazy-E comes in with a lot more vicious energy on the track, and I think he does have the slight edge over Dr. Dre lyrically, especially since Eazy-E talks about how he owns, I believe, Dr. Dre's music, or right, something like that. In this line that I'll have up right now, Eazy-E has a bar essentially saying that Dr. Dre is going to essentially have to give him money due to his deal after dropping the diss track. So I think this was a cool angle to go at, and I think won him the diss battle. So I wouldn't put it in S. I don't think it's the most iconic diss track out there, but it's definitely on the same level as these. So there we go. Alright, let's go back to a more modern battle, and let's go with Eminem. I chose one Eminem diss battle. He had plenty of them, and he's had an amazing track record in regards to diss battles, because a lot of times like the rappers he battles with end up being irrelevant, and it happened here as well. And this one is actually one that I lived through, so that's why I want to talk about it. And it's MGK versus Eminem, and we'll start off with MGK, who didn't start the beef necessarily. I believe Eminem had a diss toward MGK on Kamikaze, on one of the songs there, because MGK, when he was an adult and when Eminem's daughter was a minor, MGK said how hot Eminem's daughter was, which was definitely weird to say. Some heavy pedo allegations there. So it took like a decade later, but Eminem finally responded to MGK, and MGK did not like that. So he dropped Rap Devil, which is better than expected from MGK, but a lot of the disses here is so weak. The weird beard line. He talks about how Eminem is a legend on the very same track. I think the hook here is awful, especially with the auto-tune. It just sounds so warbly, if that makes sense. So yeah, not the best, but honestly better than expected. MGK can go at a D level. It's not bad as these, honestly. Eminem, on the other hand, dropped Killshot. This was like what he really needed at the time, because this is during his decline era. You could tell that Eminem is starting to become washed after Revival. Kamikaze was good in my opinion, but still, he had a lot of boomer takes on that album. So, you know, we kind of needed this moment, because Eminem used this moment, put his anger to his pen, and dropped one of his best tracks in years, where he decimates MGK essentially. Had a lot of quotables, basically saying how no matter how old he gets, he'd rather be like 80-year-old him instead of 20-year-old MGK. Eminem talks about how he had to build MGK's career in order to destroy it. I thought that was a good line. He makes fun of some of the disses that MGK had for him. It's very witty, it's funny, it is clever, a lot of smart lines, a lot of quotables. I honestly really like this, probably more than most people, and the beat here as well is insanely good. So to me, I think this is an A. I really mess with this track. It's probably the only track I go back to post like 2010 Eminem. So yeah, to me it's a great track, good diss track. And you know, MGK ended up doing punk rock after this, so ended a rap career there. But okay, let's move on to Drake versus Meek Mill. Meek Mill was kind of peeved off for some reason. He was on Twitter talking about how on Rico, Drake didn't write his lyrics, which I believe that's the first time that's ever been mentioned about Drake, how Drake doesn't write his lyrics, which obviously is a big thing in rap music. Like, you gotta write your own raps, and if you don't, credit the writer. But yeah, Meek Mill was angry on Twitter, so what Drake decided to do was drop Charge Up, which wasn't an insanely good diss track. Essentially, he is getting his pen ready, talked about how hungry he is to go after Meek Mill, essentially, and of course addressing the allegations of him not writing his own raps. It's good. It's a good starter. I think if it was the only diss track, it wouldn't be a great response, but as the charge up, as like the prelude of what's about to happen, it's decent. So I'll put this in C. And now let's talk about back to back, because right after Charge Up, Drake went back to back. He decided to drop immediately with back to back, which is a lot more harsher. You know, that he goes a lot more aggressive on this track, going after Meek Mill and saying how they need Drake in the industry, essentially. And yeah, I think the beat goes harder here, Drake goes harder here, and essentially just trying to prove that he is a great writer, he is good at his job, and Meek Mill should back off because there's no coming back from this, which is kind of true. So back to back, I'll put it I think B. It's not my favorite Drake diss track, surprisingly enough. It's on the same level as Push Ups, so I'll leave it at B. Meek Mill did respond with Wanna Know. You know, there was a lot of hype going into this because he essentially started the beef. So how is he gonna finish the beef? How is he gonna respond to Drake's 2 diss track? He responds with a very weak diss track, essentially just reiterating that Drake doesn't write his raps, and adds in a reference track from Quentin Miller, the Know Yourself reference track, which, to be fair to Drake, I don't like giving Drake props or anything. Like, I don't like the man, but many artists use reference tracks, so it's not really a big deal that Drake uses a reference track, at least to me. So yeah, this was a very weak response. I will be putting it in F. Look at F. Well, there's a lot of bad diss tracks over the years. But let's now talk about a classic battle. Let's talk about Nas versus Jay-Z. Why don't we? I think this started off with Jay-Z wanting Nas to be on one of his Blueprint tracks. Nas was like, nah, for some reason. Jay-Z sampled him. He mentions Nas several times, talking about how, you know, him and Nas and Biggie, even though he recently passed away at the time, they were the ones running New York, and Nas didn't really like that. Nas was like, nah, it's just me. It's essentially like the Drake and Kendrick thing, where Kendrick was like, no, there's no big three, it's just big me. Nas was like that too. Nas was going for the King of New York crown, while Jay-Z was trying to give him props at the time, but Nas was like, nah, it's just me, buddy. And he's had like subliminals towards Jay-Z for a bit. Him and one of Jay-Z's like label mates, I believe, or someone under Jay-Z's label, were beefing. Memphis Bleek is his name. Memphis Bleek and Nas went at it. Nas responded to Bleek on Stillmatic and had some disses for several people on Rockefeller, including Jay-Z. And this essentially led up to Takeover, one of the greatest diss tracks to never win a diss battle. Like, this is a crazy track. It is insane. This Kanye beat is one of his best of all time. I love the electric guitars on here. He essentially makes fun of Nas for only having one good album in 10 years. He questions Nas' street cred, making fun of his music, making fun of Nas himself and his lifestyle, not believing who Nas truly is, going after Nas's career. It's really, really good. Like, honestly, I was gonna put Takeover in A, but looking at all these tracks, Takeover is better than all of them, and Jay-Z still lost. I'm honestly gonna put Jay-Z with Takeover at S. It's that good. Like, I love it that much. So Jay-Z will be an S. But he did lose because after Takeover, after months of waiting, Nas dropped Ether, which became one of the greatest diss tracks of all time, to the point where it kind of became an adjective. Like, when something gets ethered, that means it got decimated, it got destroyed. That's how good of a track Ether is. And, you know, Nas kind of does the same thing, calling out Jay-Z's lifestyle, saying that he sold out, saying that he's not really about the streets, making fun of Jay-Z and how he looked, the way that he has lips for some very inappropriate actions that we'll talk about right now. But yeah, he calls Jay-Z ugly, he called him misogynistic. He calls him F slurs several times on this, which, you know, ages poorly now, but at the time, like, that's insane. Like, that's a good way to go at someone, I guess. And yeah, Nas just goes at him, saying like he tries to copy his own lifestyle, yet doesn't have the street cred for it. Talks about how Eminem out-rapped him on his very own track. Yeah, Ether was insane. It's one of the greatest diss tracks of all time, and will be going in S tier with Takeover. Even though it lost, it should be like right here, honestly, like in between S and A, but we'll leave it at S. But this wasn't the only Jay-Z diss track. Jay-Z dropped Super Ugly, and things did get super ugly because in this diss track, Jay-Z essentially talks about how he had an affair with someone that Nas was seeing, Carmen Bryan, and was essentially sleeping with her. He had a 3-year affair with Nas's girlfriend, and a lot of people didn't like that, which I thought was interesting doing my research on this track, because, you know, this isn't the first or the last time a rapper mentions a rapper's significant other. Jay-Z took a lot of heat for it, to the point where, like, his own mom went on the radio and talked about how disappointed she was at Jay-Z. Jay-Z went on the radio himself and apologized. So, you know, I think the song is good, but if you had to apologize for your diss track, that's not a good sign. So although I really liked it, this was a huge L at the same time. So I'm gonna put it at C. I think that's a good in between, you know? I honestly think it's maybe A good, but like losing is not ever a good thing. And apologizing for it, kind of like what J. Cole did, isn't a good thing. So I think in between is fair. So we'll put that in C. And yeah, we're almost done here. Let's talk about one of the most exciting diss battles that I got to live through, which was Pusha T versus Drake. You know, Pusha T has been like sub-dissing Drake for a long time, calling him out for not writing his raps. And that's essentially what he did on Infrared, the final track off of Daytona. He took that track and utilized it to go after Drake and how he doesn't write his raps and so on. Not the most hard-hitting and vicious disses, but, you know, it got the ball rolling. So, because it got the ball rolling, and I do think it's a good song overall, I'll put Infrared in B. But yeah, after Infrared, Pusha T got his response, and Drake dropped Dubby Freestyle, which honestly might be my favorite Drake diss track. I think it's really good. I love the beat here. I like some of the disses, like how Pusha T looks up to Kanye, even though Kanye is younger than him. One of the flaws here is that Drake goes after multiple people instead of mainly Pusha T. He probably should have targeted Pusha T the whole time, but he didn't. He targeted Kanye as well, spent time on him, so that was a mistake. But again, I really like this diss track. I guess the beat did carry a bit, but Drake's performance was really good. It was very vicious, so I'll put it in B as well. Yeah, I think it's really good, but not on the A level. So after Dubby Freestyle, it was over because Pusha T dropped the Story of Adidon, one of my favorite diss tracks of all time. And yeah, Pusha T rapped over the beat of the story of OJ and essentially had one of the most vicious diss tracks of all time. Talking about Drake doesn't write his raps, but like forget about it because there's bigger issues that need to be discussed, and that big issue is that Drake has a child, which at the time nobody knew about, and it was revealed by Pusha T that Drake had a child. He was going to reveal the child with an Adidas press run, and not only did he have a child, but the person he had a child with was a porn star, which, you know, Drake definitely should have mentioned Pusha T's fiance on W Freestyle, because that kind of led to the perfect moment of Pusha T talking about who Drake sleeps with. So that was an insane moment, but it doesn't stop there. Drake talks about how 40 is really sick and that he will soon die, which is crazy to do, but you know, there's no limit for Pusha T. He will do anything in order to dismantle the person he's going after. No holds barred for him, and because of that, it is easily one of my favorite rap diss tracks of all time, and I think it's up there with the best. I think it's my second favorite of all time, honestly. So shout out to Pusha T, especially with that cover art with Drake with the blackface, which is also a topic that Pusha T mentions, how Drake isn't black enough. This is one of the most vicious things I've ever seen, like to the point where Drake had to write a letter responding to the blackface, and didn't even like respond back to the diss tracks or anything else from the diss tracks. He just responded to the blackface and apologized for that. But alright, let's now talk about the last rap beef of the day. I was gonna say best for last, but honestly, after researching about this is more tragic than anything. But yeah, let's talk about Tupac and Biggie, the biggest, most infamous rap battle of all time. You know, they both started off as friends. Tupac kind of wanted to be a mentor for Biggie because Tupac was very poppin' back then and wanted Biggie to have the same successes. So they got along pretty well. They were trying to do business with each other. They made songs with each other. They spent a lot of time with each other. But then one day, Tupac was heading over to Quad Studios to meet up with Biggie and another rapper that I'm forgetting at the moment, but they were gonna work together, and before Tupac was able to see them, he got jumped by robbers, got shot 5 times. You know, after quickly being treated, he was sent to jail for an unrelated reason, but because of him getting jumped while trying to see Biggie, he believed that he was set up by Biggie and P. Diddy, which they claimed was not the case. But you know, because of that situation and because Biggie dropped "Who Shot Ya," which was apparently not about Tupac at all, it was about LL Cool J, Tupac really believed that Biggie and his camp were going after him and was trying to get him killed, which, you know, after watching some videos, which I will link down below, and reading some articles, I feel like Biggie wasn't trying to. Maybe someone in his camp, but Biggie wasn't trying to get him killed because, you know, Biggie talks about how much he liked the guy and how he believed they were friends, and he believed they were just having a falling out, but he truly believed they were friends. But that doesn't matter because Tupac really thought Biggie and his camp was trying to get him killed, so he dropped "Hit 'Em Up," which is my favorite diss track of all time, and it's simply because of the energy that Tupac provides. Is a very aggressive track, very violent track. He starts off by calling Biggie fat and sleeping with his wife. Like, that's crazy. And you know, the Outlaws features were great too, but it's Tupac that shines through and through throughout the whole track. Great bars here, very violent outro, saying he's got weapons ready for anybody who's trying to go at him. It was a crazy track. I love it a lot. So Tupac would go in S tier, and yeah, I love that track a lot. Unfortunately, we all know that Tupac ended up dying in Vegas. He got murdered, and then after the murder, weirdly enough, Biggie had a diss track on his newest album, which still to this day, it's debatable on whether or not it's a diss track, which is called Long Kiss Goodnight. But yeah, this track is debatable because it's very cryptic, and with the timing of it all, it didn't seem right for him to drop a diss track, but I guess he did. A lot of people are saying it's a diss track. I really don't know. It's very cryptic. There are subs in there. A lot of people are saying that this was recorded and written before Tupac's death, but because of like the album making process back then, it had to stay on the album because it was essentially being ready to be released. But yeah, it's a good track. It really is. Because of how cryptic and lyrical it is, you could barely tell it's a diss track. So I'll put this in B. Yeah, I just want to say that, again, doing my research, it's such a tragic situation what happened. Because, again, Biggie really thought they were still friends. They were just having a falling out. And as soon as Tupac died, apparently Biggie called someone, I forgot who, but was crying on the phone over Tupac's death. There's interview clips where Biggie is talking about how he was sad that this happened to Tupac, that he wouldn't wish death on anybody, and was really hoping to hash it out with Tupac one day. But as we all know, months later, Biggie ends up getting murdered himself in LA. Everybody thought it was a bad idea. Biggie was going to LA, but he wanted to hash things out. He didn't like the West Coast versus East Coast narrative that's been pushed. He wanted to bring peace, but he ended up getting murdered. So honestly, one of the most tragic outcomes, definitely the most tragic. We lost two of the greatest rappers of all time at an early age, all due to some misunderstandings and probably some bigger, I don't even know what to say, something bigger must have had control over the situation that we just don't know of. It's still one of the biggest mysteries on who killed Tupac, who killed Biggie. Those are cold cases. Like, I was kind of tearing up when I was like hearing how distraught Biggie was after Tupac's death, and how he truly wanted to stay as friends and wanted to end this East versus West Coast narrative, but he ended up getting killed. So I think there was something bigger involved that essentially got these two killed. Don't know what that would be, don't know who would be involved, but yeah, this is tragic and it makes me sad. So sorry for ending on such a sad note, but you know, it is one of the biggest rap beefs of all time, so I had to talk about it. But yeah, that's it. That's my tier list ranking of all of the rap battles I am interested in. Again, shout out to Mr. Wolf for this episode idea. I will link your channel down below just to shout you out. But yeah, I'm done here. So thank you guys for watching. If you like the video, makes sense, right? Comment down below. What's your favorite diss track of all time? I'll do a quick top 3. Mine would be Hit 'Em Up, Story of Adidon, and honestly, Euphoria. There's definitely recency bias there, but either Euphoria or Ether. If you like music related content like this, please subscribe, since that is what I do here. And if you're already subscribed and you want more of this for some reason, check out my Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. If you like basketball, more specifically NBA basketball, I have a basketball podcast. It's called Above the Rim Rundown, where we run down all things NBA. Check it out if you're interested. But yeah, I'm done here. So thank you guys for watching. I love you guys. Goodbye. Rest in peace to Biggie. Rest in peace to Tupac.